Between Me and You. Patrick Fife in character. Today as Mrs. Stoner in When She Comes.
Of course, you know you'll have to curtsy, don't you, when she comes, they said. Well, I said, with my back, I'll be lucky to get up again if I do. 'Cause I've had this trouble with my back ever since I was a girl. Runs in the family. Get it from your great-aunt Lillian, my mother used to say. And it starts here, and it goes all the way down here, right into here. Ooh, I won't be curtsying, I said. And she won't notice me in that lot. I'll be so far at the back I probably won't even see her myself, I said. So I can't see as how one person in the middle of that crowd at the town hall is going to make all that difference, no. Well, you're just going to have to stay at home then, aren't you? I probably will, I said. Well, you'd better make up your mind, they said, because we has to know all the numbers as is going to be there, and we has to count all the heads on the way in and on the way out, and it has to be the same number each time so as to make sure that no one has slipped through as didn't ought to be there. We has to be wary of lurkers, they said. Well, you needn't look at me as though I was a lurker, I said. I got better things to do with my time. Well, are you going to be there or not, they said. We need to know tomorrow. Numbers is very important, they said. So I says, I'll let you know about it tomorrow. But I'll not be curtsying, I said. Well, I went home and I had a long think about it. I thought, she may be royal, but she's only human after all. And how do we know she doesn't have a bad back? 'Cause we never see her bending in public, do we? They got someone to do it for them, haven't they? And I thought, well, she's a mother like me. We both got our children. Oh, she got one more than me. And we both like wearing hats. Then it suddenly struck me. I will go, and I'll wear one of my hats. And even though she won't see me, I know I'll look smart. But I ain't curtsying. Well, when I told them the next day I would be there, they said, we knew you'd come round in the end. So you'll be practising your curtsy then, won't you? Oh, no, I says. I won't be curtsying. I'm just going to watch her arrive, and then I'm going to go to my little room, and I shall wait there until she's finished like. Then I can nip out the back way, and I can see her leave like. Well, just you make sure you do just that, they said. We don't want you letting the side down, they said. Oh, no fear of that, I says. I'll stay put. Well, the big day arrived, and what a day. Oh, been raining all night. A real misery of a day it were. We all had to be assembled, that's what they called it, by 9 o'clock. I can't think why. She weren't coming till 11. Perhaps they'll call it off, my Reg says to me. Oh, no fear of that, I says. These things are planned years ahead. But I wouldn't mind betting as how she'd like to cancel some of them, though, I said. Can't be a lot of fun opening extensions. Well, by 10:30, they was all still pushing and shoving to get a better view when she arrived. Mrs. Nesbit was down behind the front door, seated at the piano, 'cause she was going to play the national anthem as soon as the party arrived. Can't think why, I says to my Reg. They'd have been much better off playing a record of it. They could have borrowed ours, 'cause we had a lovely one. Peter Dawson, I think it was. And on the other side he was singing Nearer My God to Thee. There was no label on it, but we knew which side to play because of the scratch. Then suddenly the clock up on the roof boomed out 11, and as if by magic the sun burst out, just as if it had been ordered. And it shone through all the little windows at the top, and all those shafts of light came down like little fairy slides, 'cause you could have expected fairies to have slid down 'em like. And they made all these pretty patterns on the tiles. Oh, it was ever so pretty. And I had a lovely view from where I was behind the banisters on the grand staircase. Bet you look like a cage baboon with that hat on your head, my Reg says to me afterwards. 'Cause apart from the town clerk's wife and Mrs. Coppins, the lady mayoress, I was the only other woman in a hat. Then things really began to happen. Quiet at first, sort of like children singing in the distance. And then suddenly it got louder and louder every second, and suddenly you realised it was cheering, and everybody was cheering. Me as well, and I don't know why, 'cause I was inside, right at the back. Then suddenly this big black car draws up outside the entrance, and it seems to go on forever. Really big it was. And there she was, sitting in the back, just waving to the crowds like, and pulling her furs round her like you do, you know. "She's here," whispered Mr. Coppins. "All right, Mrs. Nesbit, give it all you've got." And he flings the door back like for the party to enter. Well, we got the first chord, and God! They shouldn't have put her behind the door like that. And they never did find her teeth. Well, they did, but they wasn't all together like. Well, suddenly, there she is, coming up the steps, all silhouetted in the doorway with the sun shining behind her. Oh, it were a lovely picture. Then Mrs. Coppins' granddaughter edges forward and shoves a bunch of flowers at her. She seemed quite pleased to get 'em. They was sweet peas and cornflowers, with some of that maidenhair fern sticking out. Ever so pretty it were. Went lovely with her coat. Probably chosen to go with it, I shouldn't wonder, my Reg says, 'cause they do that sort of thing, you know. "How would you know, clever Dick?" I says to him. But he was clever, my Reg. Then she walks quite quickly up the hallway, looking left and right as she went. There was just her and one of those ladies who waits behind all the time, Mr. and Mrs. Coppins and the town clerk, and they made their way up to the wall where the plaque was, behind the two little velvet curtains with the bits of cords for her to pull like, and then it would say as how she'd open the extension. Well, I've never heard so many muffled moans and groans from people trying to bow and curtsy. This is where I make my getaway, I says to myself, and getaway I did, to my little room, to wait until all the excitement had died down. 'Cause I could always nip round the back afterwards and watch for the car to leave, and that way I'd got a chance of seeing her twice. Well, I don't know how long I'd been sitting there, or how long I'd nodded off for, but when the door opened and there she was, well, I couldn't have been more surprised if you said they'd put my mother through the mangle. "May I come in?" she says. "Oh, why, yes, your Madge." I couldn't get the rest of the word out. It just seemed to stick in my throat. "Oh, please make yourself at home," I said. And seeing her just standing there in the doorway, she looked just like the picture on my tea caddy. Except he wasn't with her, of course, and she didn't have that little brass hook on the front to stop the tea falling out. And oh, those long pearls, they just seemed to go on forever. And the little hat with the feather on it, oh, I love that. Reg says it was what was called a toque. "What a lovely place you've got here," she says. Oh, it's a real home from home, and so spotless. A real credit to you. Thank you, I says. Oh, yes, she says. We could do with you at the palace, she says. Your brass and your tails, lovely. And I've been in some town hall cloakrooms in my time, but this is the best. Well, I says, I like to think it's got a individual touch about it. Oh, it's got that all right, she says. Your dried flowers, lovely. Well, I says, my Reg says, if you want to be something in this world, you'll end up being nothing if you can't be anything. How wise, she says, how wise. And then, the shock of my life, she opens up this little grey purse, no bigger than a slice of bread with the crust cut off, pops her hand inside, and brings out a packet of 10 Capstan full strength. She puts one in her mouth, and then she says to me, would you care to join me in one of these? Oh, no, thank you, I says. Your husband doesn't approve, eh, she says. Well, neither does mine. He thinks it's a nasty habit. I stood there watching her light up, just like a professional she was. A bit of this and a bit of that. She only had about half a dozen puffs, and then she puts her hand inside her purse again and brings out this little pair of gold scissors. And holding the cigarette over the basin, cuts the end off, just like that. It went. Then she slips it back into the packet, and she pops it all back in her purse. You're staring at me, she says. Well, there's been a war on, you know. Old habits die hard. And then she says, what's your name? Mary, I says. Snap, she says. My name's Mary, too. Oh, I know, I says. And your daughter? She's Mary, too, isn't she? She's married to that Lord Lascelles of Airywood. That's right, she says. How clever you are. Lord Lascelles of Airywood. Well, she says, I must be going now. They'll be wondering what's happened to me, and I've got a tree to plant at 1:30. But thank you for allowing me the hospitality of your little room. I shall always remember you, she says. And what a charming little hat that is. And I shall always remember you too, madam, I says. And may I ask one favour of you, if it's not out of line? Why, certainly, Mary, she says. Her calling me Mary. It seemed ever so funny coming from her like that. Would you be so gracious as to sign this for me, I says. Why, certainly, Mary, she says. My Reg says I didn't ought to have done it. It was a bit naughty, but I says to him, oh, they've got a sense of humour. But you know, when I'm sitting here on my own and I look up at that frame above the mantelpiece and I sees no smoking, Mary R., I can't help laughing to myself, which is a nasty reminder of that day and the pain I suffered for weeks afterwards. But I'm just ever so glad of one thing. I'm so glad she didn't turn round as she was leaving. Otherwise she'd have caught me bent double in my curtsy. Oh, and that would have been a terrible thing. Really terrible.
That was When She Comes, written and presented by Patrick FYFFE, in character today as Mrs. Stoner. Between Me and You was produced by John Fawcett Wilson.